Time to do something I do on all my cars, even my daily drivers. I always convert everything to Evans Waterless Coolant. There's some good reasons for it, and there's a lot of misinformation and misunderstandings surrounding this coolant. Boils at 375 degrees. That's important because you can run a pressureless system. That's also important for older cars because you have a lot of plastic components that get brittle over time and that can rupture under the high pressure you need. The main reason why you run pressure in a cooling system is to keep the coolant from boiling. That's because it's mixed with a certain water content. With FDs, if you watch my coolant video, we sometimes do like 70% water and 30% coolant, depending on what area you live in, and some people just run straight water as well. If you run like a deionized water with some kind of water wetter and anti-corrosive additives, but when you do that, you have to run a really high pressure cooling system to keep it from boiling. People don't really understand the risk of coolant boiling, and we're not just talking boiling in the radiator. The main threat of the water turning into vapor is usually surrounding the combustion area, whether it be a rotary or a piston engine. So even if the rest of your engine stays below boiling point, even given the pressure you're running, you can create hot spots right around the combustion chamber that create vapor pockets. And when you have those vapor pockets, you don't have the heat transfer you need going into your liquid. That in turn creates the conditions needed for pre-ignition or detonation, and we all know with rotaries, detonation is a killer. So it is true, Evans Waterless Coolant does not cool as good as water. This is no magic formula that somehow makes your car run cooler. It actually cools worse than water. So this is a fluid that will not transfer heat as well, but the benefit is you won't get those vapor pockets near the combustion chamber, which will in turn reduce your chance of knock. Now, in order to run this, I totally recommend making sure your cooling system is in tip-top condition because of the fact that it doesn't cool as good as water. But I have run this in totally stock FDs, and you can run great temperatures. It doesn't put anything at risk, and you can actually run engines hotter because this doesn't boil. You won't have those damaging effects of the vapor where it warps heads and piston engines and everything that comes with that. Now, since I am installing the coil end flow with this car, I'm going to have more than enough cooling capability. And I used to run the Fluidine radiator in these cars, which is not as good as the end flow, but it fits better. But as long as you have your cooling system in great condition, this stuff works awesome. Now, for FDs, this is pretty simple to do, honestly. We have great points in the engine that we can drain the coolant. If you haven't seen that, refer to my coolant video on how to change the coolant. Since this is a waterless coolant, we want to get as much water out of the system as possible. The main reason for that is the boiling, and then also this has no anti-corrosive properties to it, whereas regular coolant does. So if you leave water in the cooling system, then you're apt to get rust and corrosion within the cooling system, which you do not want to do. Not to mention you'll have vapor pockets with a little bit of water content in there. So Evans sells this prep fluid, and this is hydroscopic, so it should help absorb the water that's in the system. The process is you drain as much coolant out of this system as possible. You fill the whole system with the prep fluid, and you run it until the thermostat opens, like you're burping the cooling system. You drain everything as much as possible again, and then you refill with the Evans Waterless. Then you take a sample and make sure you don't have any water left in the system. There is an acceptable limit as far as water goes based on Evans, which is a very minute amount. And what I've found over time is it usually gets pushed in the overflow and then evaporates, and it's usually out of the system after a certain amount of time. Now for the FD, I get 2 of these because that's about what it takes to fill up the system when you've drained everything. And then I get 3 of these, especially if you're converting to a coil inflow like I am, because it's a radiator core that's about twice as thick. So if you watch my coolant video, 2 gallons is usually good for a good drain and fill, but since we're really being thorough about draining all this, 2 gallons of prep fluid is good to help absorb all the water to do all the drain and fill. I put the new coil in, and then I'm going to need more than the 2 gallons because it's going to hold more. So it's probably going to take about 2.5 gallons. So let's get working on it. The first step to converting to Evans coolant is going to be draining the fluid. You want to drain all the coolant from the radiator, the block, as any point you can. Get as much out as possible. If you don't know how to do that on RX7, go back to my coolant video. I do show you how to drain the radiator, and there's also a block drain down here on the left-hand drive driver's side or right-hand drive passenger side. Underneath the spark plugs there is a drain plug for the coolant. We want to get as much coolant out of the system as possible. That way we can get the Evans prep fluid in there and flush out any possible water that's in the system. I have this all torn apart right now because I'm working on the stock mount intercooler project. So I am replacing the radiator with a larger coil just to make sure it fits with my kit. Nevertheless, the process is all the same. One thing I do like to do on any car I convert is pull off the heater core lines. Typically, even if you drain the block and the radiator, your heater core is gonna hold a little bit in there. So I'll pull off the top heater core line, or if you have them side by side, either one, and then I'll blow into this. Be careful with compressed air because the cooling system is only meant for so much PSI, and an air compressor can put out so much more than that. So you can actually crack your plastic components. So I usually blow in this by hand, I can't reach this with my head, but I make a makeshift tube and blow in there, and you'll hear it kind of draining out. Get as much out as you can, like I said. Then you'll be dumping prep fluid in there. You can also get a funnel, put it here, and then pour some prep fluid. That way you know it goes in and flushes out whatever in the heater core. Notice how the prep fluid is clear, and you'll see the Evans is like a golden color, but this is not green, but this is clear like water. Look how nice and clear it comes out now. A little bit of green, but for the most part, we're pretty clear. Now you'll notice with the Evans, it's a little bit goldish color. It's not green or yellow or anything like that. It's a goldish, real clear. As it gets older, it'll darken up. So that's typically normal. If you open it up a couple years down the road and it's brownish. If you open it up, it's brownish. After bleeding the coolant and letting it go through everything with the thermostat opening, we still got a nice golden color. It's not green. It means I got pretty much all the coolant out before. It's okay if there's some mixed. Now it's time to test the coolant and make sure their water content is below specifications for Evans. I got this refractor meter from Evans, I don't know, probably 15 years ago. Maybe 20 years ago, I don't know. But they have this on their site. I'll have to check to see if they still have it. They used to have it at least. You take your dropper, you pull some up and you put it in here and read it. It's got some instructions on it. But before you do that, you actually have to calibrate these things with some distilled water. So there's some instructions in there to calibrate it with distilled water around 70 degrees. Do that first. Then you take your coolant after it's been cycled through the car. Make sure the thermostat's opened up, put it in here, and then you can check the water content. Pretty important you do that because, like I mentioned before, you don't want water in your system. So bleeding the coolant may or may not be your last step in the Evans conversion. For me, one of the most important pieces is going pressureless. So on an FD, it's a little bit different, especially if you have the AST still, which I tend to keep mine. Your pressure cap is on the AST, and the cap here is a non-pressure cap. It's just a sealer. So this is air separator tank, and this hose goes to your coolant overflow here. The problem is if you convert this setup, now this is in a different location because I'm doing my custom stock mount intercooler kit, but this is about the same height as factory, but it's just placed over here with the stock mount. This is lower than other parts in the cooling system. So if we were to convert this to a pressureless system right now, everything above this part would bleed down through this hose into the overflow tank, which we don't want. That'll leave a large air pocket, in the upper part of the engine. So what we have to do is I'm going to cap this off, and unfortunately my FD does not have the easy neck here for the this is, I think, technically the thermostat cover housing, because the thermostat sits behind here. Some FDs have actually 2 bolts right here, and you can just convert to the Turbo 2 little cap filler that has a nipple right here. I'm gonna have to drill and tap a hole right here for a hose barb, and then when I cap this off, then I can just move this hose to here, and that'll be the highest point in the system for the overflow tank. So that's going to be the last thing to do on my conversion, and then we'll be ready to go. To make your system pressureless, all you do is take your radiator cap, usually has a rubber seal right there, and pull it off. You want to keep the rubber seal that's down there because that's going to seal the top, but this is your actual pressure seal. That's got the spring on it, so this seals up against the lower part of the radiator or your AST, and the pressure actually pushes up on this spring here, and that's what designates the actual pressure of the system. So when you pull this seal off, it allows the fluid to flow right by this and into your coolant reservoir, and you no longer have a pressure system. Now we got the product of a complete pressureless system. Capped off the barb here that typically goes down to the reservoir, tapped and installed a barb here where there normally would be one. I like to use these fuel injection clamps instead of the screw type that cut into the hose. And don't forget to top off your coolant reservoir. I replaced mine, it's brand new, so it's bone dry. I'll need to fill it up a little bit, run the car a little bit, and keep topping it off until it's about right, because I'm sure there's still going to be some air bubbles here and there. So after about a week, I'll just keep an eye on it.